What is up, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. I am the MMA Cannibal. Today I'm bringing you guys my picks and predictions for UFC Fight Night Abu Dhabi. Corey Sandhagen versus Nurmagomedov. Umar specifically. Pretty solid Fight Night card we got going on. These Abu Dhabi ones have really been delivering lately. This main event is awesome. Corey Sandhagen is one of my top 3 favorite fighters right now. So as you guys can imagine, I got a lot of emotional stake in this main event. Means a lot to me personally. That won't affect my picks though. I always just go with what I think is the best decision. And without further ado, I may as well get right into these. First off, we got Cedric Dumas versus Dennis Tululin. Couple of cans, if we're being totally honest. However, Dennis Tululin is a much older can, nearly 10 years older than him. Has a record that is significantly worse at 11-9. Cedric Dumas is sitting at a pretty 9-2, which 9-2 is not anything super crazy, especially for somebody who's already 29 years old and is not performing at the highest level of MMA. But it's significantly better than 11-9. And for that reason alone, really, I kind of am already taking Cedric Dumas by a decision just because of that one reason. Cedric Dumas is also, a little bit taller than Dennis Tululin and a little bit longer in the reach, which obviously are usually advantages. Dennis Tululin, not the greatest in the wrestling, which Dumas has a bit of a specialty in there, which I think is what he's going to use to exploit in this fight and just ride it out to a relatively boring 2-1, 3-0 kind of decision. I don't see this fight being anything super special, which is to be expected from two fighters that I don't see to be super special. Up the card, we got Jai Herbert versus Rolando Bedoya. Jai Herbert, if you guys don't remember, is that guy that fought a short notice Ilia Topuria, who was moving up to lightweight, and did get a knockdown on him, but eventually got brutally knocked out himself. And if you guys aren't familiar with Rolando Bedoya, this is the guy from Peru who has 2 fights in the UFC and has lost both of them. Now, those 2 statements I just made right there pretty much summarize my thoughts on this fight. For a little bit more detail, I mean, like I said, Bedoya is from Peru. They're not a super established country in MMA the way, the UK is, or the US or Brazil. So in terms, if you're not putting up the performances, then I don't have much reason to believe you're going to improve significantly, simply because you don't have a great structure around you to do so. Nothing against Peru. They're doing their best, they're making strides. I mean, there used to be no Peruvian fighters. Now we got Bedoya. We've had Claudio Puelles, not performing the greatest, but they're in there, which is more than a lot of countries can say for the UFC fighters. Unfortunately for Rolando Bedoya, I think this is going to be 0-3. I'm taking Jai Herbert by a decision. Jai Herbert is pretty, kind of on and off fighter, win some, lose some type of deal. But making it competitive with Topuria like that, despite the circumstances that surrounded that fight, is still pretty impressive. It has only aged better for him. And typically when Jai Herbert wins, it's by some sort of knockout. Rolando Bedoya has no history of ever being finished on his record. So for that reason, I do take Jai by a decision, but wouldn't be all too surprised if this was the fight where the chin got cracked. Overall, I mean, I can't say I expect too much from this fight either. I kind of expect it to be Jai Herbert just winning, doing enough each round in the striking to win. I don't really see much grappling coming from either guy, but who knows. In the end though, Jai Herbert by a decision, easy money. Up the card, we've got Guram Kutateladze versus Jordan Vucenic. This fight's pretty interesting to look at for sure. Jordan Vucenic is one of those more hyped up prospects from the UK. He's been doing pretty well in Cage Warriors. I went back and watched a couple of his Cage Warrior fights. Just from the eye test, he looks pretty good. Looks very talented. Has a lot of skill. Fights smart. However, he doesn't really jump off the page as anything super astounding or wowing. And I think that's more or less what you would need to pull off a situation like this, where he's coming in short notice, UFC debut, up a weight class. He's normally a featherweight. He's fighting this at lightweight against Guram Kutateladze, of all people, who's very strong, has really good technique. Overall, just a really well-rounded, solid fighter who I know lost to Elvis Brenner, but he was piecing him up before that loss. Part of the reason why that win was so good for Brenner is because it was a crazy comeback. Overall, though, Guram more often than not performs very well, wins in his fights despite his inactivity. And these circumstances surrounding Vucenic coming into this fight are just not favorable for him. I am going to take Guram by a decision. I don't think Jordan's going to get finished. I think his chin will be solid, especially, you know, being up a weight class than he normally is at. He'll be much more rehydrated. But he just won't have the game plan. He won't be able to deal with the size and the strength of Guram very well. And there's nothing he does super exceptionally that I think he can exploit against Guram. And that's really just what it comes down to, is Guram's stronger, he's had more preparation, etc., etc. Although, if Jordan comes back after this and returns to featherweight, I do see him having a pretty solid performance against probably whoever they put him against. Moving on up, we've got the Blob versus Don'Tale Mayes. I'm not going to lie to you guys, when I saw this fight announced on Instagram, I genuinely went, holy shit. Because I don't know about you guys. I'm not going to say that I have a lot of stakes or personal excitement for this fight, but I'm really looking forward to it. This fight puts a smile on my face when I see it. Shamil the Blob Gaziev has definitely captured the hearts of the fans in his short UFC tenure so far. Put on a decently solid performance against Jairzinho Rozenstruik. I mean, showed a lot of attributes that a lot of these other Blobs don't really have. Don'Tale Mayes sort of falling into that area. However, Don'Tale Mayes just has a couple things that kind of separate him from other Blobs. He is taller than Shamil and a little bit longer than him. He's fought Cyril Gane, which a lot of the Blobs, I suppose a lot of them have done, but in general, I think fighting somebody of that kind of high of a caliber tends to put things into perspective for a lot of fighters and kind of changes how they approach things and how they view their training. And I think typically it leaves a very positive effect on them in the future. Andrei Arlovsky was hanging around for a long time just fighting Blobs and kind of floating through the fights to decisions, whether he lost or won. Don'Tale Mayes was one of the few that actually got the knockout on him, which I think is actually a pretty solid look. If you see the way that Arlovsky was comparing to a lot of these unranked heavyweights for a while. And he's, despite being younger, has been in the UFC longer. And although he hasn't done much in his time in the UFC, and Shamil has kind of become even more high profile than him very quickly with less time, I think because of Shamil's age, I would have expected him to beat Rozenstruik if he was going to. And because of that, you know, maybe he will just completely outclass Don'Tale Mayes and be more skilled than him. But at this kind of heavyweight with these kinds of Blobs, I think it really is just kind of all a coin toss. It's all very 50-50. And I think I just like the idea of, you know, Don'Tale Mayes KO'd Arlovsky. He's younger. He's more used to a UFC staging, even though Shamil is going to have more of a home turf here. I just kind of like Don'Tale Mayes by knockout a little bit better. Being a little bit bigger, younger, etc., etc. All the other things I've already said, I think they all work in his favor to get a finish here. But like I said, it's a 50-50 coin toss. Don't be surprised if Shamil wins. Don't put this on a parlay, please. Continuing on, I believe as our prelim headliner, we have Alonzo Menifield versus Azamat Murzakanov. I can't say I have too much to say about this fight either. Alonzo Menifield went life and death with Jimmy Crute, which is just an awful look. I don't think Menifield really has anything for anyone other than solid knockout power. However, Azamat also has that. However, he has really good technique and footwork and explosivity to accompany it. And cutting to the chase, I'm going to take Azamat by a knockout. I think it's going to be second round, maybe third round. He's going to wear down on him a little bit, build up some shots, pick his moments, and then all of a sudden he's just going to boom right on the chin, right on the temple, send Menifield to the canvas. And yeah, just really show off why he's better. Because I just don't rate Menifield at all. And even though I don't think Murzakanov is like phenom or anything, he's definitely better than Alonzo. And it's just, it seems kind of like a free win for him in Abu Dhabi, which is fine. Just so long as it's a knockout or entertaining in some way, I'm good with it. Finally, entering the main card now, we have Yoel Alvarez versus Elvis Brenner. Can I hear a holy banger for this fight? This is going to be fight of the night. I would be amazed if it's not. It's only real competition in that regard is like the main event, I would say. Both of these guys, very scrappy fighters, have a lot of finishes on their record. Yoel Alvarez has actually finished every single fight he's won. I believe Elvis Brenner's stat is similar in that regard, around the 85% range or so. And as we've seen with both of them, they're both absolute dogs. I mean, Yoel Alvarez had one of the worst cuts I think I've ever seen against Arman Tsarukyan. And he was still in there, still fighting the best he could, obviously. I mean, like I said, crazy cut. And eventually that fight got stopped. Elvis Brenner kind of getting destroyed by Guram for the most part, comes back, absolutely puts a beating on him in the last minutes of that fight and gets the finish. Crazy comeback from Elvis Brenner. Very impressive. In a lot of regards, I can kind of see this fight as almost a bit of a mirror match. However, the differences that are key here is that Yoel is older, but not old. He's 31. Brenner's like 26. I think that's the perfect age gap for Yoel to just have a bit more experience over Brenner, a bit smarter IQ, and also have grown a bit more and filled out his frame a little bit better. As we've seen with a lot of these guys, they kind of still keep growing and filling out their frame for their division as time goes on. You know, we kind of saw it a lot with like Charles Oliveira. We're seeing it now with Chase Hooper. And Yoel's already a big dude. He is significantly larger than Elvis Brenner too. He's got about 3 inches in height and 3 inches in reach as well, which is going to assist him in the striking and in grappling situations. Yoel has a really good Muay Thai kind of style. Brenner does as well, but Yoel really throws everything into those leg kicks and throws really good straights. Brenner kind of has to get in your face, make it dirty, which I think he will be able to do. I don't think Yoel is going to be able to manage the distance super well. However, when it gets into closer ranges, I think Yoel will probably not be afraid to instigate grappling situations where I think he will get the better of Elvis Brenner. Not because Brenner's bad, but because Yoel is also good and his physicality, the differences in the physicality between them will favor Alvarez heavy. It's going to assist him in getting top position and controlling positions. Alvarez is very active even when he gets you in his guard, so he's never going to rest and let Brenner really settle anywhere. And due to all this, plus the striking, the power that Yoel can carry, I think that at some point, you know, it's going to end up in a grappling situation that will end with Alvarez snatching up a submission. I think this fight is going to be a great learning experience for Elvis Brenner. But right now, Yoel is just like a couple steps ahead in his career compared to Elvis, and it's going to be what makes the difference for him. Continuing on, we've got Mackenzie Dern versus Lupi Godinez. Be a solid striker with some good pop in her shots. And Dern's on a 2-fight losing streak right now to Amanda Lemos and Jessica Andrade, two of the very few women who are known for being power punchers, essentially, hitting with good force, which Lupi does do. And I think she's going to take full advantage of that against Mackenzie Dern. I think it's going to be a little bit of a massacre on the feet, almost. Not quite as bad as it was when she was fighting the likes of Lemos and Andrade, but I think it's going to be a very clear for Lupi. Mackenzie Dern might steal a round with some control time and a takedown. But I think overall, Lupi's going to be able to stuff most of the attempts. I think she's going to do significantly better on the feet. And I think she's going to be able to damage Mackenzie in the face a bit as well. So even when Dern does get takedowns and whatnot, Lupi's still winning the fight off of damage. It's possible Mackenzie Dern comes into this fight making the proper adjustments on the feet and the stand-up, being very defensively sound and getting her takedowns. I do think Mackenzie is a bit bigger than Lupi. So if she can really focus and commit to just control and landing, you know, close-in elbows, strikes to the body on the ground, she can win this fight on points. I just see Lupi being able to do that better and more effectively. Continuing on, this fight. Michael Chiesa, I'm going to take him by a submission. He's probably going to win by a decision because Chiesa also sucks. But, I mean, Tony Ferguson's on a 7-fight losing streak. Been getting finished left and right, outclassed left and right. I think it was MMA Guru who said this. Could be someone else, but Ferguson now, I mean, he just looks like Yuri Prohashka without any of the athleticism. I think that's a really good way to summarize it. If you're picking Tony Ferguson, you're either dumb or delusional. Yeah, alright, it's on the card. That's all I can say. Featured fight. Chito Vera versus Davison Figueiredo. Very excited for this fight. This is going to be a fun one. I think in terms of Chito Vera, the only real advantages he has in this fight is his size and his durability. I think he's going to be very hard for Davison to really hurt. And because of the size, it's going to be a little tricky to maneuver him in the grappling situations or kind of really cover the distance like it was no problem like against Rob Font when he did it. Other than those two things though, Chito sucks. He's very slow, has no killer instinct, and plays super defensively without really ever throwing much of his own offense to make up for the fact that he's just sitting there shelling up half the time. I think Davison's flyweight champion skill is too much for him. We can see that it's translated pretty well to bantamweight. He doesn't have the same knockout power that he had before, but he's still got some sting in his shots, which matters when you're going up against a guy as tough as Marlon Vera, because he may not be able to really hurt him, but he'll probably be popping his head back with some shots. They'll look like they're effective. He'll be very fast. I think he'll be able to get in and out of the pocket very well, avoid the big heavy strikes that Chito's going to throw at him, and not get knocked out. I do think Davison's going to go for some grappling exchanges here too, like some takedowns. And even though I don't think he's going to dominate Chito in that regard, simply because of size and strength differences, I think he's going to control him here and there for a minute or so at a time. I think he'll be able to get some ground and pound shots off, maybe get close to a submission here and there, but never quite finish it. And overall, just be better than Marlon Vera for 15 minutes. And I'm going to take Figueiredo by a decision. The only path I see for Chito winning this is like one of those Dominic Cruz type head kicks, really. But I think Figueiredo, his eyes are too good for that. He'll see it. He'll be able to move out of the way. He's too fast. And that's really what it boils down to. In our co-main event, Sharo Magomedov versus Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. It upsets me that this is the co-main. Chito versus Vera should be, Chito versus Figueiredo should be the main or co-main. God damn it. That should be the co-main event over this, but whatever. He's local guy. They're trying to promote him. It's whatever. It's fine. I don't know if you guys have seen that comment that Mikhail Oleksiejczuk made on his Instagram to like some dude. It was probably a few days ago, maybe like a week or so ago. But essentially it said, to paraphrase, when I lose my neck... No, he said, if I lose my next fight, which I probably will, I'm done with sports. I don't know about you guys, that doesn't inspire any confidence in me. And I was already going to pick Sharo Magomedov by a knockout, because he's done nothing but really go on a Jessica Andrade type run lately, where he's just taking fight after fight and getting finished after finished. So that's kind of what I was expecting in this fight. And seeing a comment like that, it takes away any ounce of faith I had in him to survive. And maybe second or third round. I mean, the only reason I don't want to take it more confidently in the first is because Shara should have knocked out Tricoli a lot earlier than he did. And he couldn't. He didn't. So because of that, I mean, I could even see this fight going to a decision. But I'm going to trust that Shara is good enough to take advantage of a super disheartened Mikhail Oleksiejczuk, who seems to just not really be here anymore for anything other than a paycheck, which is sad to see. I mean, a comment like that was very upsetting to read, especially from a guy who has a fight coming up. So, I mean, yeah, that's really all I can say. I don't even want to go into too much of a breakdown. When somebody starts talking like that before a fight, I feel like the writing's on the wall. Last but not least, the main event, Corey Sandhagen versus Umar Nurmagomedov, a man who miraculously is at number 10 despite having fought 0 ranked competition, a man who is fighting in a main event on home turf despite pulling out against this guy the last time. Dagestani privilege is real. That's not what I'm here to discuss. I always have to make a comment about it because it's crazy. Moving along from that though, completely irrelevant. This fight is a great fight. Umar has very good kicks. His boxing is a little lacking, but his kicks are honestly so good it makes up for it and makes his striking pretty solid, especially, you know, having the takedown threat available to him at all times. However, I do believe Corey Sandhagen is significantly better than him on the feet. And when I say significantly better than him, that doesn't mean I think he's going to knock him out or really piece him up. I just think he has very smart striking IQ. He has very good shot selection, a good range of attacks. You know, that flying knee from Corey is devastating and could land on Umar at some point when he goes for a takedown. I don't see that happening, but it's possible. However, Corey is definitely the better striker of the two. He works his jab really well, good straights, which I think are going to be the difference in the striking because Umar really only has the kicks and some hands, whereas Corey's a much more complete striker, and I think it's going to allow him to clearly win striking exchanges, although they will be somewhat close. I think he will clearly win them. And we've been seeing improvements in Corey's grappling over the course of the last few fights. He's been integrating it into his game a lot more as an offensive mechanic, not just defensive. Umar being a Nurmagomedov, we obviously know he's got very solid grappling, has a few submissions on his record. And that's the problem, because Corey has a real problem with giving up his neck or just putting himself in bad positions where he can get submissions snatched up on him. When you look at his fight against Cheeto, when you look at his fight against Rob Font, there's multiple occasions in both fights where he will go for takedowns and end up in a guillotine hold, or he'll sprawl out and not sprawl out, he'll scramble out and then end up in some sort of Darce hold. And while they're not particularly close, they're closer than I'd like them to be when going against people like Font and Cheeto, who I would imagine Umar is better than on the ground. And not to mention Sandhagen's most infamous loss, the Aljamain Sterling RNC, that came very quickly because Sandhagen has a very bad habit of giving up his back when he's trying to get back up. And that's a habit that I haven't seen him break. In his most recent fights, I still see him doing that. That seems to be his number one escape technique to this day, which I think is going to cost him. I think 5 rounds with Umar is too long to be giving up situations like that and not get your neck snatched up. I'm taking Umar by a submission. I think Corey is going to beat him in the striking clearly. I think the grappling is actually going to be very close. I think Corey's going to scramble with him very well. But I think Umar is just going to keep getting close on submission attempts until eventually one's just perfect and Corey's going to have to tap. I think it is going to probably come later in the fight. If I had to say specifically, probably around the 4th round, maybe in the 3rd. But I feel like if this fight hits the 5th, it's going to a decision. So I want to say around a 3rd to 4th round submission for Umar Nurmagomedov. Which, like I already said, Sandhagen's one of my favorite fighters, so it's going to hurt me to watch it happen, but this is what I see happening. These are my predictions for UFC Fight Night. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think. Did I get any of these right? Did I get these wrong? How do you guys see these fights going? What do you think of the fight night? And with all that said, thank you for watching, and stay violent.